outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. My name is Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and we have a very special guest today. All my guests are special, but we have an exalted member of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. For those in Memphis, that's their equivalent of the City Council, although I'm sure it's much more stately than our City Council can be. And as a former member, I can say that. Jack Coatar. Jack, welcome to the program.
Oh, Alan, thanks for having me. I get called a lot of things exalted. It's not usually one of them.
Well, I'm a lawyer, just like you. I'm a lawyer and a politician, so I know how to blow smoke.
There you go.
But Jack, for those of you in Memphis, Jack is in second or third term on the board.
I'm in my third term now. I filled a vacancy, so I've been in office. I was just reelected in the spring, and I'm in my 6th year at City Hall.
Very good. And he's also a lawyer in St. Louis, so we've got a lot to talk about. Now, you went to college in St. Louis, but you didn't grow up in St. Louis. Is that right?
That's right. I wound up in St. Louis mainly for its geographic convenience for me. I'm a native Chicagoan. Grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago into high school, and then my family relocated to suburban Kansas City, and I lived there and finished high school in Overland Park, Kansas, and wound up in St. Louis. Had a neighbor growing up in Chicago that was a SLU Billiken. Grew up in town here. And told me to take a look at St. Louis. And I was familiar with the town from driving back and forth from Kansas City to Chicago. It's 4 hours from each, and I would always cut through St. Louis. So I said, sure, I'll take a look at it, and fell in love with the town and the university, and have made a career and made my home here.
I've, as you know, I went to high school in Belleville, which is near St. Louis, and I know what you mean. It's a great town. It's a great size. It's got a lot of amenities of a big metropolitan area, but it's not as big, and therefore I think it's a little more accessible than some of the other bigger cities.
For sure, and that's something I tell, when I'm talking to students and people starting their career, that's something I talk about all the time. Is I grew up in the suburbs of a very big city, one of the biggest cities in the world, Chicago. The opportunities, it's the big fish, small pond thing. Like the opportunities I've had here and the things I've been able to do politically, both on a state level and locally, would have taken, well into my 40s or 50s to accomplish in a city the size of Chicago. And I may have never gotten there. So that's where I think, if you, in some of these mid-sized Midwestern cities or mid-sized, East or West Coast cities, there could be a lot of opportunity for people who want to put in the time and effort.
What in 2021, as we're coming out of lockdown, hopefully, and putting a lot of that stuff behind us, what's on the immediate horizon for St. Louis? What should we be looking at happening in St. Louis in the next, year or two?
Yeah, so St. Louis. We're in a situation right now. We're having a big fight about it, the city council and the mayor, but we got a massive amount of money from the federal government and from the American Rescue Plan. That plan was tiered not so much by population, but by percentage of poverty. I don't know all the metrics they used, but as a result of the metrics they used, our little city there's only 300,000 people in the city of St. Louis. There's close to 3 million in the metro region, but 300,000 in the city. We alone, which we are our own county, we got $520 million from the federal government that we've got to spend in a couple of years. For those listening at home, Alan,
we're twice the size of you in the city limits, and we didn't get a fraction of that. But being your own county, I'm sure helps.
Being our own county, but also that speaks to the level of poverty and the challenges we face as a city. So yes, it's nice to get a lot of money, but we're getting the money because there's that much need. I mean, this is a town that has serious problems. So
Yeah.
that's what's, that's sort of front and center. We're talking Missouri sort of in the national news about, COVID and vaccination rates and, the spread of the Delta variant. In the city, our vaccination rates are better than the rest of the state. But we've got to figure out, we're having this big fight right now with the mayor about how to spend, not all 520 million, just about the first 100 to 130 million. And there's not even that broad much of a disagreement over sort of the areas of need and what we need to spend it on. It's really more politics at play, which is pretty unfortunate because we know the need is there. We know the need is there for rental assistance, for, to keep people in their homes, for mortgage assistance, for home repair, for encampment, homeless shelters, and temporary housing, which that's a huge problem, and not just our town, but in cities across the country. So there's certainly the need, and we just got to get through some of the petty politics here, and at least get the first 100 million or so out the door to show that we're doing something.
It's interesting in Memphis. I would say, if I were in charge of spending that money, one of the places I would spend it is in mass transit, public transit. But with bi-state and other things, you've got a pretty good transit system in St. Louis, don't you?
We have a decent transit system. We have pretty robust bus service. We have a light rail line that runs sort of east-west from basically well into Illinois, over to Scott Air Force Base in St. Clair County, all the way kind of out west, and then branches up north up to the airport. We've locally as a city funded years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, a sales tax increase to help fund expansion of our light rail. And so we've got a pot of money that's growing considerably each year. I think last year took a bit of a hit because of COVID, but a pot of money. What we need is a federal match. So we'll have, for most of the projects that there's going to be an 80-20 federal to state or federal to local. We'll have our local match. It's a matter of, and maybe we'll see this in an infrastructure bill from the Biden administration, but we need the federal funds to be available. And thus far, we haven't seen that. I don't anticipate that we're going to use these COVID relief dollars on a light rail expansion. I think there's many other critical needs we could meet, and that the money for light rail will be available down the road.
Yeah, we're just trying to get a decent bus system here. Light rail, I don't think our density is enough to justify light rail. There are lots of people in Memphis who would love it, but I just don't think we have the density. But
right.
As
transit changes, you start to wonder, do we need an expansion of light rail? We're talking about autonomous vehicles and really green buses and that are nimble, and we can make, dedicated lanes to them. I'm by no means a transit expert, but you do have to wonder, by the time we get the funding, for federal dollars for a rail expansion, is it going to be sort of an obsolete way to move people around cities?
Yeah, you kind of wonder what I always say buses is the Ralph Cramden solution. What's the George Jetson solution?
Right. That's good point. I like that line.
Because I don't want to be the last city in, and I imagine you wouldn't either, want to be the last city in America to order a bus.
Exactly. No, we don't want to be that. We just had a big failed experiment trying to bring, old timey trolleys back, and there's still a possibility we're going to have to give back some federal funds on this failed trolley experiment. That was a complete boondoggle.
Well, that's unfortunate. In Memphis, we did the trolley thing in the 90s, the early 90s, and probably used the same federal program you're talking about. And they have been successful in the sense that we've managed to keep them running, but they really are kind of antiquated as a means of moving people around meaningfully. It's great for the tourists, but it's not. You don't want to commute.
No, on the trolley.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, the last time I was in Memphis was, it's probably been 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. But I think the trolleys were out of service up and down that main drag. They're having some issue where I guess they were having fires in the braking systems, because I remember asking about it at the time because I was interested, because we were starting a trolley project.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was they were at that point they were 20 years old, maybe 22 years old, and I was involved in a lawsuit as a lawyer representing the transit authority when the trolleys first went online. And I won't bore you or our audience with it, but it was very interesting because part of the lawsuit was brought by a person who thought that the trolleys were their idea, and they were kind of shut out of the whole project. It was one of those kind of lawsuits. And one of the issues was how the trolleys were going to be maintained. And we heard a lot of testimony from the technical people. And basically that what the testimony was, that if you tried to maintain the trolleys in-house, because of the limitations of doing it in-house, they would last about 20 to 25 years. And then you'd have to completely rehab them. And that's exactly what happened. It's kind of interesting. But they're back now.
Oh,
and
good.
They're it's an important part, civic, kind of icon, but I don't know how successful they are as reliable people movers.
No, you can move some tourists from the convention center through downtown, but yeah, people aren't taking them to work, I would assume.
Yeah. I used to joke and say, if I start at the same time as a trolley from my office, in walking, I will beat it to the courthouse. So, so anyway, but so you did college and law school in St. Louis, correct?
That's right. So yeah, I went to St. Louis University undergrad here, studied political science and economics, and then got very involved. I was politically inclined growing up, and got very involved in really more Missouri statewide politics while I was in college. When I started at SLU, Missouri was still a swing state. We were a swing state in 2004. Actually, ultimately, John Kerry's campaign pulled out, but that was sort of my first interaction with a big presidential and gubernatorial campaign, was that 2004 cycle. And I volunteered. I would go down the street from SLU and hang out at the local Democratic Party office, volunteering for making phone calls, canvassing, which is how I met our mutual acquaintance, my good friend and client, Brian Wabi, who was our former chairman of the party here and still a DNC member. Met him through that process, and got involved in campus politics, got involved in some local politics, and then ultimately worked for Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. Growing up in Chicago, I was very familiar with Barack Obama and his congressional run against Bobby Rush back in the day, and then sort of watched his rise and was an early Missouri supporter of his, me and a handful of folks. And so I worked for him in Iowa in the caucuses, and then here in Missouri for the primary on Super Tuesday and the general. And then when I graduated from school, my first paying job out of school was as an organizer on his campaign in the area of town that is now my home and my aldermanic district.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that's how most people I talk to, that's how their political career really started. Is you get involved in a campaign kind of as a foot soldier, and you kind of work your way up and network your way up. And it's great that both political parties, I think, are pretty inclusive that way of giving young people a chance.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're a young person willing to show up on time and work long hours, whether it's Republican or Democratic campaign, there's a spot for you. There's a staff position for you. For the most part, the entry level spots are going to be on the field side, and there's really no getting around that unless you're maybe some super talented social media genius, or other than that, you're basically going to start as a field person. You're going to have to do a cycle of that before the sort of upper echelons of campaign management are available to you. And that's something I still do. Well, at least did. I don't know. Missouri's place in Democratic politics has certainly changed. We've not had much statewide success in the last few years. But in the last several Senate races here, when Senator McCaskill ran in 12 and then again in 18, I was a senior member of her campaign team, running all of our basically our election day legal observer program. So organizing and training hundreds of lawyers across the state to hang out in polling places as observers and keep an eye on things and make sure we don't see some of the shenanigans and problems that some folks said occurred in 2020. If you've got lawyers from both parties in those polling places, you can be rest assured you're rarely going to have many problems at a polling place.
That's right. I came up at a time where, routinely ballot security and those kinds of things were done, back in the 80s. There was a lot of, if you didn't have somebody there, you really didn't know what was going to happen. Computerized voting actually makes it a lot harder to do that than back in the day. But I have a healthy skepticism, and I didn't really believe. I've always believed that if you had an election stolen from you because the other side cheated, well, that was on you.
I don't disagree. I mean, yeah, that's politics for you, right? Growing up in Cook County, that is definitely politics.
But I also don't subscribe to the notion that there are no problems. Humans are humans, and if there's a way to game the system, somebody's going to try to do it. So, but that's as partisan as I'm going to get on that subject. But as I said, we've as people who watch this show and listen to this show know, we've opened an office in St. Louis. Really love St. Louis. It's my second home. Love spending time there, and love representing people in your town. You practice law you still practice law. Before you went into elected office, you were in the DA's office, is that right?
I was an assistant. Well, we call them in the city of St. Louis, they're called circuit attorneys. We use a very, like many things, we use an antiquated term, but yeah, it's an assistant district attorney. So I was there after I finished law school. I spent about 2 years in the DA's office. Frankly, would have spent longer there, but I had an opportunity, to run for alderman. That was sort of a once in a lifetime chance. My predecessor of 29 years decided she wanted to retire, and she was someone I was close with, and she called, and I was 29 years old and sitting in court one day and she said, "Hey, how about you think about doing this?" And I looked at my sort of political involvement and what I was doing in the DA's office and said, well, I'm doing all this for an opportunity like this. So I had to, it was a difficult conversation with the district attorney at the time, who had given me a chance and I think expected me to stay longer. But ultimately, I'm glad I jumped ship and did this, and am continuing to serve the city. But the DA's office, I'll say it was the best job I ever, to this day, the best job I ever had. It was the most fun I had, and extremely rewarding, to be really on the front lines of this criminal justice system, working with the police, working with victims, and working with our public defenders and our private defense bar. I just loved it. Met so many judges and people, and in a very short time got to try a bunch of jury trials. It was both a first seat on my own, and some major cases, as a second chair, and it was just an invaluable experience.
That's very good. So what kind of practice do you have now?
I ask myself that question every day, Alan. It depends on the day. Today I'm litigating. So I work for a big firm here in town called Spencer Fane. We're sort of a national firm focused primarily in the Midwest, and we've got a heavy presence in the Mountain West too, in Denver and in down in Texas. But my practice is it's a kind of a hybrid. I still litigate some, mainly not because I'm the most brilliant legal mind or can write the best briefs, but because I have still very deep relationships with the judiciary in the St. Louis area, both in the city and the county, through my time as a DA and just sort of my political involvement. While our judges are nonpartisan, there's still a lot of politics involved in becoming a judge. So I have, as a result, have a lot of friends and colleagues who are former prosecutors with me that wind up on the bench. But so I litigate. Probably half my practice is that, and the other half is really just sort of outside counsel corporate work, where I'm advising small and medium-sized businesses on a range of issues. And if they've got a labor and employment issue, I put them in touch with one of my colleagues who handles that. If they've got a merger and acquisition, we've got people that handle that. So I sort of play, quarterback and help connect my clients with who in my firm I think will be a good fit for them. And then the third part of my practice, which has been an interesting part, something I've really enjoyed the last couple of years, is working as an attorney in what I would say is our fledgling medical marijuana industry. We approved, I believe in 2018, a constitutional amendment setting up a medical marijuana program. It is slowly but surely getting off the ground, and I've got a number of clients who are either license holders for cultivation or manufacturing facilities, and then also some who believe they've been aggrieved by the state and would like a license, and we're fighting over that. So it's been a very interesting area to practice. It's changing every day. It's a good combination of litigation and regulatory.
Sounds like it.
That's my long-winded answer.
No, that's all right. Hate to skip around here, but
that's all right.
Last time I was in St. Louis, it was a couple of weeks ago. I'm driving down Olive, I think, and I passed this huge new sports complex that's for Major League Soccer. How's that going?
That's right. And it's now that it's out of the ground, it's really impressive. So yeah, we were awarded an MLS expansion team, 2 years ago now. They're supposed to start, I think it's now next season. I don't remember if it's 22 or 23. But the owner of the team, that's one of the only women-owned professional sports teams, a wonderful lady named Carolyn Kindle Betts, who is an heir to the Enterprise rent-a-car fortune. She's the team owner. We're going to be called the St. Louis City. I think kind of as an ode to, your Premier League teams, your Manchester City and others. And the stadium is right smack dab in the middle of downtown. And it's going to be beautiful. It's sort of the pitch will be recessed sort of below grade, and then you just sort of walk right into the stadium and into your seats. And it's really going to be quite the facility when it's done. And this is a big soccer town, as you may or may not know. So I suspect it's going to do very well. I know there's great interest in the season tickets already. So I think this thing's going to be a big success.
Well, I think, I know my kids grew up playing soccer, kind of the way I grew up playing football and basketball. So they understand the game better than I do. And I think that's probably true across the board. Plus, there are a lot of folks my age that love soccer. And we have the next level down soccer team here, Memphis FC. And they play in Redbird Stadium, so it's really interesting.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with the Redbird Stadium there, which is right downtown.
That's right, and it's really interesting to see soccer in a baseball stadium, but they do a great job with it, and that place is packed.
Yeah.
And so there's activity downtown in the summer just about every night, whether it's a soccer game or baseball game into the fall. And I noticed that your stadium is I thought it was very, very well located. It looks like it's within walking distance of Union Station.
It's across the street. I mean, it's just sort of the western edge of downtown. I mean, it's a 5-minute walk from the Enterprise Center where the Blues play, probably a 10-minute walk from maybe 15-minute walk from Busch Stadium. Yeah, I mean, it's right sort of smack dab downtown. Right, it's close to the Metrolink line, so there's going to be transit access to it. I mean, yeah, it's going to really transform that sort of western boundary of our downtown.
Yeah, which was always kind of I don't want to say it was a no man's land because that would be unfair, but it just was. It was just kind of the boundary of development between downtown and I don't know what the SLU Fox.
Yeah, Midtown area. No, and that, Alan, you're exactly right. I mean, this stadium went in basically what was a winding bunch of interstate highway ramps that basically was very underutilized land on the western side of downtown. We got rid of all those. The state MoDOT, the state transit agency, was very cooperative, worked with us. And so this thing's going in smack dab in the middle of downtown West, and basically we'll start to bridge that gap because, it is a no man. It was a no man's land, sort of between your downtown business districts. And then, you had many blocks so you get to this big Wells Fargo campus, and then you've got St. Louis University. And we are slowly closing that gap between the two.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be really great. And, SLU has done such a great job of, converting their urban campus into a campus. And it's all of that development is not far away. And it's going to be, I think it's exciting for St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Similarly, I didn't necessarily grow up playing soccer or watching soccer, but had the opportunity to attend an MLS game in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Center a couple years ago. And I mean, they sell out that football stadium for soccer. I mean, they put 70,000 people in there for these MLS games. We're building a more traditional open air soccer stadium. I want to say it's 25,000 or so is capacity, but I have no doubt, it's going to do very well and be a popular attraction in the region.
Well, now you represent your district is essentially the downtown area.
Yeah. So my district, the 7th ward in the city, is basically downtown. The entire central business district of downtown, some of our loft dwellers just west of that, the casino on sort of the northern edge of downtown. And then I come all the way along the river. I take in Gateway Arch National Park, all the industrial riverfront, basically down to just shy of Anheuser-Busch's brewery in Soulard, which is where I live. And then I've got the couple historic neighborhoods just south of downtown that are just booming, that are doing very, very well.
Yes, I had dinner. I guess this may be just west of you, but I had dinner in Lafayette Square last time I was there.
Yes.
And, and I've been in that area many times, but I came out and it was about 9 o'clock on a summer's evening. So the sun was almost setting, but you could still see. And the architecture there is just gorgeous. It's kind of reminds you of New Orleans, kind of that French colonial.
Oh yeah.
St. Louis just has some. Just if you're a real estate developer and you're listening to this broadcast, if you're tired of making money in Memphis, St. Louis is a great opportunity because there's lots of great historic rehab up there, and it's going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Lafayette Square is one of, and that Lafayette Square is in my district. That's one of my 7th ward. But so that neighborhood and Soulard are two of this city's big success stories, which where people have taken what were bombed out, burnt out brick shells of buildings and revitalized entire neighborhoods, basically starting in the 70s, and they've been a huge success. And housing values are through the roof down here. And now we're trying to replicate that success in other neighborhoods, south of Soulard and some north of downtown, where, you start to get a few interested rehabbers that do good work, can fix up some of these buildings. So we've got a lot of vacant buildings still, much like, Memphis has a similar problem. We've got a lot of vacant housing stock. If you can get a few developers to commit the capital to fixing these up, 1 or 2 buildings at a time, people will start moving in. There's tremendous demand to live close to downtown, to live in some of these big old buildings. So yeah, it's there, and we make it. That's one of the things I would say the city and really the state of Missouri does pretty well. We provide, historic tax credits that you can, compare with your federal historic tax credits to make the numbers work on some of these can be very costly rehabs.
And, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be a mover and shaker in cities. Cities really were neglected in America for a long time. And, before the pandemic, they were really starting to come back. It's going to be interesting to see what if that continues in the same way. But I'm very bullish about it. Here in Memphis, we've got they've changed the name of it a couple of times. I call it Union Row, but it's a big development that's going to connect our downtown with the Edge and Medical District, which are just east of downtown. Our orientation is just the mirror image of yours.
Right.
Mississippi River is on the west side of town here instead of the east side.
Yep.
And 10 years ago, even it would have been unimaginable for that kind of development in Memphis, much less all the other things that are going on here and in St. Louis. So what do you think that the future holds in St. Louis to take advantage of those opportunities?
Well, I think the pandemic did sort of definitely slowed things down. I mean, things were moving very much in a very good direction, before last spring. I think there's still a lot of desire. I think people are looking to get out of some of these big mega cities that are very expensive and the housing's very expensive. And as more people can work for wherever, I think some of these Midwestern cities, St. Louis and Memphis are going to be more attractive. I know what's holding us back the most, not just as a city, but as a region, is our crime. Our crime is, it's on the national news regularly. It's a real problem between our short-staffed police department, our murder rate, our inept prosecutor. We're in a situation where we got to if we can't get that right, there's no way we can attract people to move to this region, or whether they're moving themselves to work remotely or a business relocating here. It's hard to make that sell in the current environment.
What is the square footage rate, in downtown St. Louis for Class A office space?
I want to say right around $18 a square foot, which is low compared to Clayton, which is our sort of suburban business district about 10 miles from downtown, where it's close to $40 a square foot.
Yeah, you're probably a little lower than us downtown, and our east is probably, it's been a while since I priced it, and someone may correct me, but I think it's around 25 or 30 out east, in the newer areas. But it also depends on how you define Class A space. Brand new space, maybe closer to 40. I don't know. Right.
And that's one of the challenges we have as a region is we basically, we've created two business districts on opposite sides of the city-county boundary line, which causes all sorts of issues. You're seeing, you have a lot of big companies that want to stay downtown and like the views and like the access to public transit, which is a lot better than in the suburban business district. But then you've got a lot of professional service firms that look at, we have a 1%, income tax in the city that they don't have in the county. And for some of our professional service firms in particular, in full disclosure, I work for one of those firms that's based in the county. They look at that, the bottom line, and say, we'll pay a little more rent and, keep our 1%. So at some point, we've talked for many years about, city county consolidation, but we've got to stop. We can't be competing against ourselves because we need to be competing against Memphis and Nashville and our neighbors, to the south.
Well, it was all the same to you, Jack. Y'all keep fighting amongst yourselves. It's worked well for us for 50 years.
And honestly, we do it to our own detriment, fighting with each other. We only do it to the benefit of Nashville, Memphis, Indianapolis. It's sort of our surrounding cities that are all, within 4 or 5 hours. That's who we compete with. We're not competing with Chicago and in New York. We're competing with our other, sort of mid-sized Midwestern cities.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, Jack, I appreciate your time on the show. It's been great. I could talk to you and have in the past for hours. Next time you're in Memphis, let me know, and
I will.
We'll get some barbecue and some Memphis beer to see if it's as good as that German beer being made in St. Louis.
We can do that. That sounds like a great plan, Alan. And obviously, I'm sure I'll see you the next time you're up here. And keep up the good work. I'm looking forward to listening to some other episodes.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this broadcast, and of course you did, it was great, very informative. Please share us on social media. If you receive this by email, forward it to somebody who you think might be interested. Maybe somebody who's going to St. Louis would like a little inside baseball on where to go in St. Louis. For Ask Alan, Alderman Jack Coatar is going to go and provide some good government, and I'm going to go get some justice. So thank you all very much.